the end of Matthew. For those of you that English is not your first language, we have got a translation kind of available. This little thing here apparently takes, well, even my English turns it into normal English and then translates it into whatever language that we can. So if that's something you want, Heather is around and she'll be helping you to get that in. But okay, I'm going to read from Matthew 27. And it might seem a little bit obscure when it comes to Easter verses. Some of you will have listened to Easter verses over the years, but hopefully it'll become clear. So Matthew 27, verse 57 says this: As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out from rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary was sitting there opposite the tomb. Now Easter, I have got sort of a bit of a love-hate relationship with Easter. I do love what it symbolises in terms of the resurrection of Jesus, of new life, and I've got to admit, I do love chocolate. I love Cadbury's Easter eggs. If you want to bribe your pastor with chocolate Easter eggs, Cadbury's is preferred. But I kind of like it, but I've got no idea what chocolate eggs has got to do with the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You know, and chicks and bunnies, and that, I get it, spring, I guess, new life, but the sentimentality and the kind of saccharine, sort of edged message that Easter is these days, I kind of hate, actually. It's like, it makes it a little bit kind of pathetic. It's like it loses the power of the fact that the king went to the grave and defeated death. You've got this kind of, Easter becomes like, Jesus is our happy ending. You know, whatever bad things happen, Jesus will make it better. We've got this kind of bit sentimental, bit saccharine, bit soppy, you know, all bad things turn for good, spring after winter. Nah, it's kind of true, but it's not enough, is it? It's not enough. And the way to kind of cure yourself of the sugar-coated nonsense that is Easter is to actually read the gospel accounts. Because when you read these things, you realise that this wasn't just like a moralistic kind of, you must do better. This was raw. This was painful. This was offensive. But the truth is, I would rather you read this stuff and be offended by it and get the truth than actually have some kind of, you know, sugar-coated pretense that is often the way of Easter. So what we're going to look at today is some of these accounts, a couple of accounts of people, real-life people that were eyewitnesses of what happened 2,000 years ago. So we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the sovereign. Okay, so firstly, the good. We've got this geezer, Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph was a highly respected, wealthy insider. He was on the in crowd. He was a guy that was kind of well known, was well connected. He was esteemed. He was successful. He was honourable. Legend has it that he got his wealth through investing in tin mines in the West Country. Did you know that? In Britain. He came to Britain, and legend has it that he turned up on the shores and he planted his staff on I think it was Glastonbury Hill. He was there at Glastonbury, right? And he planted his staff and he went to sleep and he woke up and it started budding. And it became this hawthorn bush. Right, and it's apparently indigenous around the West Country, and every year a budding branch from this hawthorn bush is taken to the sovereign of this country. Wow! I mean, that's just showing that I know how to use Google. To be honest, it's got nothing to do with the message, other than he made his wealth apparently in Great Britain. And he was very well connected. So connected that he could go into the presence of the governor of Jerusalem at the time, Pontius Pilate, and he could just go straight in. Have you ever been in one of those situations where you're not quite sure if you're allowed to sort of say this, stand, do this, or approach this person? Have you ever been to a Catholic funeral? Oh my goodness, I've been to a Catholic funeral. I love Jesus, but I ain't got a clue what's going on. I just done what the nun done at the end. When she stood up, I stood up. When she sat down, I sat down. It's like there's certain places you go, you're not quite sure what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Joseph of Arimathea knew what it was to go into the presence of Pontius Pilate and ask for a dead body, and he goes, okay then. He was a good man. And listen, some obscure poor man could not go into the presence of a man like that and make like requests. It just wouldn't be allowed. But he gets an audience with Pilate immediately, and in so doing, he fulfills like a 7th century old prophecy in Isaiah. He says he was signed a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. He was this well-connected, important person. And then the next thing we read about him is that he himself prepared Jesus' body as it was being buried. His body was detached from the cross, was taken to the tomb, and Joseph himself, this important man, wrapped him in grave clothes and put him in his own tomb. This was not the sort of stuff that a posh geezer like Joseph of Arimathea would do. This was slaves' work, or it was women's work. Important men never did this sort of thing. And yet he had so encountered Jesus that he had changed, and his heart was changed. He was absolutely humbled. And the moment that he publicly aligned himself with Jesus was the end of his political career. That meant all sorts of implications. He was never would have been seen in the same way again. And yet he considered Jesus worth it. So he was the good. Secondly, we've got the bad. We've got also at the grave, we have Mary Magdalene. Now, Mary Magdalene was the polar opposite of Joseph of Arimathea. She was an outsider. She was looked down upon. She was from a town, Magdala, which is on the coast of the Galilee. It was quite a large town, a bit of a party town, and rumour had it that she was once a prostitute living in Magdala. But she had, to say the least, a dubious past. We don't know all the details. What we do know about her, in Luke 8, it tells us that Jesus had cast out 7 demons from Mary Magdalene. She had troubles in her past. She had a history. And the truth was, those that would detract from the message of Christianity saw this as this was the Achilles heel of the Christian message. The first witness of the resurrection was a person like this. In a day and age where a woman's testimony was not considered important in a trial. It was just not. Women were seen as property. They weren't of their father or their husband. They didn't have any right to testify in a legal system at all. And also, a woman like this, the rumours around her past. Why on earth would Jesus choose someone like that? This was seen as the detractors of the Christian message. Says, well, listen, you do not. Of course it can't be true. Look at the sort of people that are testifying to this. You don't. Listen, you do not make up stuff like this. It doesn't help your case. The only reason that you would even admit that someone like this was there at the grave witnessing it because it is true. I had a pal a few years ago. A girl just come back from the hairdressers, right? And she was quite proud of her new haircut. It was a new style. And she said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, it looks really nice from the back. And I mean, rookie mistake, obviously, but what he was suggesting was far more than what he was actually saying. You know, he was saying that he didn't like the front. He said, when Jesus chose to use someone like Mary Magdalene, it was saying something far, far bigger. It was saying that, listen, Jesus didn't come for just the good guys. Jesus didn't come for the nice people. Let that wash over you here today. Jesus, if you think you're nice, if you think you're good here this morning, then this message is not for you. This message is for those of us that know we need help. Jesus was a friend of sinners. He came to seek and save the lost. He didn't come to just get the good guys. Why would Jesus use a hysterical woman to forward this message? It's written because it's true. Let's just read the account a couple of days later. She's watched where Jesus was buried. And on the third day, she comes back to the tomb. And in John 20, we pick up the story. It says that now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and one at the foot. They asked the woman, why are you crying? They've taken my Lord away, she said, and I don't know where they've put him. At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realise that it was Jesus. He asked her, woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for? Thinking he was the gardener, she said, sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him. Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. And what we see here, again with the rawness of eyewitness, right? What we see here is you can't manufacture faith. Okay? Because she had all the evidence, concrete, in front of her, and she didn't recognise Jesus until Jesus revealed himself to her. What do I mean? We've got Mary coming, and she had come to find a dead body. She wasn't expecting Jesus, even though Jesus had been saying it, I'm going to rise again. So many times he'd been saying it, that even the enemies knew that Jesus had made this claim about the fact that on the third day he would rise from the dead. It was taken so seriously that a detachment of soldiers was placed outside to guard the tomb. Like, they knew about it, but she still didn't believe. She saw, like, the stone rolled away. She saw that the body wasn't in there. She saw the grave clothes. She saw two angels in the tomb. And yet she still didn't believe. And then she was there. She was there. And she thought that the greatest victory that this planet has ever seen was the worst disaster. She didn't recognise him until he called her name. And he called her. Did you get that? It wasn't like, Jesus, where are you? Where are you? It's all there in front of her. But she didn't get it until Jesus stood at the front of the grave and says, Mary. And he called, and how many of you here today? You've got the evidence, intellectually, this, that, and the other, but you've never actually heard him call your name. Perhaps today he's calling your very soul. You may be in church for years and years. This may be a brand new thing. You may be here under pretense. You've been told you've got to come by your other half. You you're here, but listen, is he calling your name today? Is it time for you to respond to him? We see, he calls the good, he calls the bad. But we see the sovereignty of God in this when, you see, nothing is by accident. There's no accident that you're here today. We see in the life of Jesus, when Jesus was born, like Mary and Joseph wrapped this newborn body of a baby Jesus and laid him in a barn stable. And at the end of his life, you've got another Mary and Joseph wrapping the bloodied body in cloths and laying him in a barren tomb. You see the importance and just the beauty of the plan of God. So that at that moment he could stand in front of the tomb and call Mary by name. I went to visit my parents when they lived in Brighton a few years ago, and I got out the train in Brighton station, and I saw a fella driving a taxi in a taxi van there that I hadn't seen since school, and it was like about 35 years or whatever. I hadn't seen this guy, and I recognised his face, but it was different somehow. It was a lot more wrinkles and a lot greyer, but there was something about him, and I remember, Paul, I remember you, I'd seen you for years. And then I remembered, but we had a fight last time I saw you. And so I pretended I hadn't seen him, and I ignored him, and we kind of didn't connect. Listen, the message of the good news of the gospel is like that. Because when the resurrected body of Jesus is seen, he looks familiar, but he's not the same. And also, listen, we've got a problem with this guy. When God spoke creation into being, Adam and Eve were put in a garden and they were built and they were created to reflect God's glory. But rather than enjoy the relationship with Jesus in the Garden of Eden, rather than to obey in this paradise of a garden, they wanted to rule in the wilderness. And we were shut out from the presence of God. So every time that we encountered God from that, it's like remembering, we had a fight. I'm going to ignore you. And the only way that is put right is if that person comes and confronts you and says, it's done, it's dealt with, it is finished. The message of Easter it isn't about chicks and bunnies and saccharin. Everything's going to turn out all right. It's about the fact that something was deeply, desperately wrong between our relationship with the Creator God. And every time he came near, we avoided eye contact. He's come and he's staring you in the eye and he's saying, you by name. He's calling you into relationship with him. He ain't calling you to be religious. He ain't calling you to be nice on Sundays. He ain't calling you to start reading your Bible and praying. They're byproducts. He's calling you into a relationship and he's calling you by name. The picture that Ray said about the envelope. Some of you, this isn't the first time that you've had this envelope in your hand and you've looked at it over the years and wondered about it. Listen, it's time to open it. It's time to open this invitation from our King into a relationship with him. Will you let him do it today? Let me pray. Jesus, I do thank you that the gospel message is so much more real. It's so much more earthed and honest and rough around the edges and sincere. and real than we can ever imagine. And I do pray, you know every heart in this room. You know the stuff that we're going through, the stuff that we've gone through. You know the bad decisions we've made. You know the complications and the difficulties that we've had. And whether it's our fault or not, we come to this place now. And we kind of recognise you. We kind of recognise that voice. And all each of us, whether we've acknowledged this week in, week out, or whether this is for the first time, Father, I pray that we would respond to your voice today. That we ourselves would walk out of that open grave. And like Barabbas, we walk free and get the adoration and the joy and the peace that you should have had as you take our place in the tomb. Jesus, I thank you that it really is finished. And I just pray that we would live lives that would please you, that would honour you. Just help us to live in the good of that right relationship that you have won with us. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Tom. We are going to have one more song. As it's Easter, we thought we'd give you an extra treat with another little song before we leave. So if we can have Rachel and the band back up. As we come and worship one more time this morning, let's not forget what we've heard this morning. Let's not forget that if you are hearing from God, if there's stuff that is striking a chord with you, remember that there's people at the end who are here to pray. There is an invitation. All you need to do is open that envelope and read on. So please don't go without